15th September, 1916, Flers Courcelette, the Somme. Dawn is a grey band pressed against a horizon of splintered trees and wire. The mud is cold and slick. Cords of duckboard drown beneath it like rib bones. In forward saps, British infantry crouch under the woolen breath of the earth, their fingers stiff around bayonets that rattle against waterlogged rifles. Overhead, the calm before the bombardment feels wrong, like the whole front has inhaled and forgotten how to exhale. Then a sound that isn't artillery crawls over the trench lip, a mechanical growl, blunt and bestial. It is not the shrapnel whistle of a shell, nor the insect snarl of a Maxim. It's heavier, nearer, a clanking, coughing rhythm, as though the war itself has found a heartbeat. Something looms through the lifting ground mist, blocky, riveted, wider than a cottage gate, studded with sponsons like iron hips. It hauls itself over the parapet with caterpillar feet, wood and wire cracking beneath its weight. Men duck, men cheer, men stare. A sergeant shouts, "Make way!" And the thing climbs, over sandbags, over the trench, over the war that had stopped men for months. On the far side, German sentries pause mid-gesture. One laughs, because laughter is the only sensible answer to absurdity. They've heard whispers of landships, of British trickery. They've dismissed them. But now an iron animal crawls out of the smoke with guns in its flanks, armour on its skin, a snout clogged with exhaust, and it does not care about wire or bullets or mud. The tank, the Mark I, has come to the Somme. The engineer, William Tritton, Lincoln, England. In a drafty factory where steam coats the rafters and iron smells like hot rain, William Tritton runs a thumb along a new chain track. He listens to the hush of swarf on the floor, tastes the grit, watches a prototype called Mother Uncoil around a test ditch. The geometry looks wrong and perfect at once. A rhomboid hull, all angles and intent, born from a single problem: how to cross the uncrossable. The soldier, Ernest Swinton. On a wind-bent training ground, Lieutenant Colonel Ernest Swinton writes feverishly memoranda on moving firepower forward, on an armoured box to carry a machine gun over mud, on turning stalemate into movement. He knows what the Somme has become, a machine for eating courage, and he cannot bear the arithmetic of it. Between them runs a wire of secrecy. The Admiralty calls the project a landship, then wraps it in a code name that sounds so ordinary it disappears on a shipping manifest. Tank. Inside that word sleeps an idea big enough to shake a continent. That morning, by September 1916, the Somme has devoured men, shells, and hope in equal measure. What was meant to be a summer offensive has become a slog measured in yards and funerals. Artillery barrages, days long, score the chalk downlands into a topography of grief. Lines that began as pencil scratches on maps harden into organisms of trenches. Front line, support, reserve, saps and listening posts, dugouts drilled deep into the Picardy clay, timbered like mines. British generals refine the only grammar they trust: lift, shift, creep. Guns first, men after. Wire must be cut. Machine guns must be masked. Infantry must walk, not run, to stay beneath the barrage's protective curtain. And yet, after all that arithmetic, the same blackboard answer appears. Machine gun fire stops flesh. The Germans know it. Their officers inspect forward positions with field glasses and dry smiles. Their Maxims wait like steel mosquitoes on tripods. They sneer at rumours of British contraptions. What could challenge the calculus of wire and fire? Something with tracks and lungs, whispers the secret. Months earlier, 2015. In peacetime numbers, it would sound like a business plan. But this is 1915, and the proposal reads like science fiction. The War Office liaises with the Admiralty's Landships Committee. Specifications bloom. Armour thick enough to shrug rifle fire. A body that can span a trench. Propulsion that can grip mud and not let go. Churchill lends his energy even after stepping from the Admiralty. Industry answers with steel and sweat. February 2nd, 1916. On a private estate at Hatfield, an experimental vehicle scrawls its name in turf. It climbs a parapet of heaped soil, tackles an obstacle ditch, and shudders to a halt wrapped in its own fumes. Observers cough and grin. "It will do," someone says. "It will do enough." Summer 1916. Training in secrecy at Elverdon. Men selected from motor machine gun units learn to drive a building. They learn the heat, the fumes, the way the hull vibrates like a struck bell. How to talk in hand signals because engines drown voices. How to change gear with 2 men on the levers and a third on a brake that feels like an anchor. They learn that the tank's maximum speed is a marching pace, about 3 to 4 miles per hour, and that its crew will be 8, commander, brakesman, driver, 2 gearsmen, and 4 gunners. Designed by arithmetic and necessity, a rhomboid hull wraps around the track so the vehicle can bite into earth at steep angles. Sponsons on the sides carry weapons. Male versions mount 2 6-pounder naval guns and machine guns. Female versions bristle with Vickers. It is quaint to modern ears, this business of gendering steel. But in 1916 it is perfectly practical. Males to crush strong points, females to scythe infantry. Weight, about 27 to 28 tons. Height, 8 feet, tall enough to make a man feel small beside it. The name that hides the storm, tank, chosen on 24th December 1915, becomes a spell that both conceals and conjures. On shipping documents, it suggests nothing more dangerous than a cistern. In workshops, it becomes a banner. In whispers, a myth. 15th of September 1916. 0 hour minus a little. 49 tanks have been brought to France. Problems have pared that number down like a carpenter whittling a dowel. Some are broken by training, some by transit, some by the inhuman patience of mud. Of those deployed, only about 25 will actually move forward when the attack begins. Slow, obstinate, gallant machines cheered by men who have nothing else new to cheer. 4th Army aligns for the Battle of Flers Courcelette under General Rawlinson. The plan is not a revolution. It is an augmentation. Tanks will go first in knots of 2 or 3, their job to chew wire, suppress strong points, and panic the unexpected. The British hope not for a blitz, but for a shove, hard enough to make the door creak. That morning, they start roughly. Some bog down within yards, others overheat. A few shed their tracks like snakes abandoning skins. But where they move, German soldiers stare, then shoot, then break. Machine gun bullets strike sparks from armour and fail. Grenades burst and scour paint and plate and fail. One Mark I lurches through Flers itself, its crew choking on fumes, firing from both sponsons, the vehicle clanking through a village street that the day before belonged to the dead. At regimental headquarters, a whip-crack of panic. Der Teufel kommt, the devil is coming. One reaction will later be paraphrased. Some German positions hold and bring up artillery. Even at Flers, guns can stop a tank if they can hit it. But the sight is enough. Panic is a weapon people forget to list. British infantry follow. Slower than hope, but faster than yesterday. In places, for the first time in months, a trench line is taken because it can be reached. Irony sharpens its knives. The tanks, mocked, doubted, understrength, undertested, work well enough to change morale, if not yet history. William Tritton, the engineer at the edge of the map. When news filters back to Lincoln, Tritton stands wordless at his drafting table. He can see it. At least he thinks he can. A mark when cresting a parapet. A crew inside counting breaths between gear changes. A shell bursting too close on the right. The shrapnel spitting like hail against the armour. He has calculated to withstand precisely that. Somewhere in France, a rivet he signed off has held. Somewhere else, another one did not. This is the first secret of invention. You are responsible for strangers' lives you will never meet, and you have no control over what they do with the thing you gave them. Crown Prince Ruprecht, the officer whose line just moved. Far to the east of Flers, in a German command post stacked with field maps and stale coffee, Crown Prince Ruprecht of Bavaria listens to a confused mosaic of reports. Something armoured, slow, gun-armed, smoke-belching, British. He is no fool. He has read about armoured cars and tractors. He understands improvisation. But this is different. This is a tool that erases trenches by simply refusing to respect them. Ruprecht's staff already think in counters. Field guns brought forward, ammunition prioritized for direct fire, special squads with grenades and explosive charges trained to chase the beast and wound its flanks. The German response is nothing if not swift. Yet the first day belongs to shock, and shock has its own arithmetic. Anatomy of a beast. 49 machines were slated. 25 actually moved. 3.7 miles per hour on good ground. 2 gearboxes, 2 men to shift them. 8 men inside. Commander, brakesman, driver, 2 gearsmen, 4 gunners. Male, 2 6-pounders and machine guns. Female, 5 machine guns. Armour that laughs at rifles, winces at field artillery. A rhomboid silhouette that can stride a trench instead of falling in. Temperature, brutal. Air poisoned by exhaust and cordite. Noise, a constant iron sermon. Visibility, letterbox slits and hope. This is not a chariot. It is a furnace that moves. The first objective, Flers, shattered houses, orchard stumps, a church that remembers bells, becomes a stage. A Mark I grinds down its main road. The village's name will now forever rhyme with steel. British infantry, exhausted by the novelty of progress, enter behind it. A corporal who survived July 1st, the day the Somme first bit, steps into a doorframe and realizes the front line has just become behind him. A staff officer, miles back, writes, "Tanks have been used. Not victory, not breakthrough. But a verb that did not exist yesterday has appeared in the language of war, and that is not nothing." Irony at work. The tank was designed to save men by taking ground that men could not. On its first day, it mostly saves morale, and still costs lives. Several markers fall prey to artillery. Others falter and become pillboxes, immobile but terrifying. An optimist might call this distributed strongpoints. A mechanic would call it a breakdown. Both are right. By then, the Germans adapt with ruthless clarity. Battery commanders switch from searching arcs to direct fire. Forward observers learn to call targets not by grid, but by shape, rhomboid, sponson, smoke plume. Infantry squads practice close assault, creep to the tank's blind side, jam grenades under its belly, aim for the tracks. Among them runs a dry, bitter humour. Shoot the beast in the legs. But for days, confidence shifts. British soldiers, who have been asked too often to walk into saw blades, see a moving wall that seems to be on their side. That is a profound change. War is fought with metal and men. It is also fought with imagined futures. On the 15th of September 1916, a future becomes visible. War that moves again. "We weren't prepared to exploit it," one veteran would lament later. "No massed cavalry ready, no reserves stacked to pour through. A chance to turn a flank may have flickered and gone, but the flicker was real." Weeks later. The Mark I's reputation spreads faster than the tanks themselves can travel. London newspapers call them dreadnoughts of the trenches. Cartoons sprout like mushrooms, steel beasts with British moustaches, German soldiers running like caricatures. In Berlin, official minds settle. The British have invented a problem. The Germans will invent an answer. Already, the word Panzerkampfwagen is murmured in corridors. Engineers reach for captured examples and calipers. The learning curve. British crews learn to cut wire, not in straight lines, but diagonals to avoid creating new firing lanes. They learn to lead for field guns, to weave even when weaving feels like breaking. They learn that infantry cooperation must be drilled, not guessed, that flags, pigeons and runners are prayer, not plans. They learn that heat and fumes are enemies as mortal as any German. The staff learns too, painfully, publicly. Tanks are not magic. Tanks are tools. They must be many, or they must be used surgically. In 1916, the British have too few for the former and too little doctrine for the latter. That will change by Cambrai. In 1917, the word massed finally appears beside tanks, and with it geometry. The first truly modern armoured plan, but at Flers, the miracle is proof of concept. What a mark I was and wasn't what it was. A rolling fortress with 6 to 12 millimeters of armor, enough to shrug rifle fire and ignore shrapnel at distance. A gun platform that could be where guns had not gone for a year. A bridge that carried its own bridge, its body. What it wasn't. Fast. 3 to 4 miles per hour was a prayer, not a promise. Comfortable. Temperatures climbed, exhaust smeared lungs, men exited with oil and cordite baked into their uniforms. Invincible. Field guns could kill it. Breakdowns could humiliate it. The laughter and the lesson. It's tempting to imagine universal German mockery before the tanks and universal terror after. Reality is less romantic and more interesting. Frontline men are allowed to fear new things. Staff officers are paid to solve them. Accounts from September 1916 show both impulses: shock, flight, and then, very quickly, method. There is evidence that some German soldiers laughed when told of British monsters. After the barrage lifted, nobody laughed for long. By late autumn, German manuals include anti-tank guidance. By 1917 to 1918, they field their own tanks in small numbers and many more anti-tank guns. But a signal has been sent. The battlefield now includes armor as a primary ingredient. Everyone will cook with it. The Somme began as an expression of faith in artillery and infantry, in volume, in courage, in staying power. It ended as an argument for something else, machines to carry firepower forward. Irony rests at the center of that reversal. The war that had sunk men into earth for 2 years was changed by something that rose above it, a roofed thing that did not care for trenches. German officers had laughed at the very idea of British tanks. Their laughter was not foolish. Before the machines appeared, the idea seemed absurd. But on the 15th of September, the absurd became real, and laughter became orders shouted over the crack of direct-fire guns. Inside a Mark I, time is a stew. Minutes stretch, seconds snap. The commander, part conductor, part priest, touches his crew like a rosary. Driver steady, gearsman ready, gunners on target. Vision slits show only slices of hell. Periscopes smear with mud and hope. A hit that fails to penetrate still hammers. The hull is a drum the enemy plays from outside. When a track goes, the machine becomes a coffin with opinions. Crews burn, or they climb out under fire. Sometimes they fight on with Lewis guns and curses. Nothing about the tank makes death less personal. It only makes movement possible again. By the end of September 1916, Flers and Courcelette are in Allied hands, local victories that matter because of what delivered them. The tally is grim. Casualties remain the metric of the Somme. But something in the story of the war has twisted, like a gear finally engaging a rack. In London, the secret has a shape now. Photographs of rhomboids on chalk. The British public learns new words. Sponson, male, female. At the Tank Museum decades later, curators will show children the same riveted plates and tell them the story of a morning when iron learned to move with purpose. In Berlin, doctrine catches up. Engineers argue over armor thickness and engine power. Logisticians sketch supply trains for fuel, ammunition, spares. Soldiers in chalk pits practice grenade bundles. Cambrai, 1917. Hundreds of tanks, not dozens. Artillery, without preliminary bombardment. Surprise as a weapon again. The ground, shocked once at Flers, is shocked systematically. 1918. Germany uses captured British tanks and its own designs. Anti-tank guns multiply. Tactics ripple across fronts like stones in water. Between the wars, men like Fuller and Liddell-Hart write and argue about armoured warfare. Others on the continent read with interest. Tanks grow faster, thicker, more numerous. The Mark I's slow heartbeat becomes a drumline for a century. A statistic can't reproduce the sound of a Mark I shouldering aside a parapet. It can't convey the smell, oil cut with cordite cut with sweat, the way fumes layer in your throat until you taste iron for a week. It can't render the expression on a German machine gunner's face when a weapon he understands perfectly suddenly does not apply. But numbers can mark a hinge. Before the 15th of September 1916, armoured vehicles were idea and rumour. On the 15th of September 1916, they were fact. After the 15th of September 1916, they were inevitable. Return to the trench at Flers. The morning is gone. The day is smoke and stones and a new kind of track mark in a road that used to be a lane. A mark once stalled now, a scar of steel in a village of scars, sits with its sponsons at rest, its crew out on the ground, faces black with a war's worth of air. One of them runs a hand along the armour and feels the heat fading. Another looks at the church without a steeple and the street without doors and thinks an odd thought, that the machine did what it could, and today that was enough. Across the lines, in a dugout that smells of damp wool and maps, a German officer sets down a cup of cold coffee and jots the first practical sentence of a new era. Bring up the guns. Target the tracks. The laughter has died. The calculus is new. The iron had spoken, and the ground belonged to its voice. The laughter faded under caterpillar tracks. The trenches remembered the shape of fear. And on a cold September morning, the earth learned a new commandment. Move.